Good morning. So, Sister Rosemary and I met a few years ago, first through the internet, the wonderful means of communicating, and then we got to meet in person, and we have become good friends. We both entered religious life about the same time, in 1972. My sister is a little younger. She entered in high school, and I entered in college. We live on two different continents in two different congregations. Sister is a sister of the Sacred Heart of Jesus of South Sudan, and I am a sister of the Holy Family of Nazareth. However, we soon realized we share a very similar passion to work on behalf of those who are disadvantaged and vulnerable in our respective countries. Sister Rosemary provides a safe haven for girls who were once captive by the Lord's Resistance Army, or girls who have been abandoned by their families, suffering unspeakable horrors of forced murder, routine rape. These girls are rebuilding lives at St. Monica's School in Uganda, as Sister Rosemary teaches them to sew, to grow their own food, and to show mercy to others. Holy Family Institute continues a similar legacy, from helping youth succeed in school and in the workplace to supporting families dealing with isolation, poverty, and trauma. Holy Family Academy, our new high school, is an affordable, innovative college preparatory and STEM-focused career readiness high school for students of all faiths, and we aim to help students who can't afford a traditional Catholic high school tuition and put them on a career pathway that will lead to a meaningful life. Sister Rosemary and I teach youth the same things, to be self-reliant and to learn how to show mercy to others. The girls at St. Monica's School make their own uniforms. The students at Holy Family Academy make their own desks. And Sister Rosemary and I are hoping that one of these days we're going to figure out how her girls can make my students their uniforms. Sister Rosemary was named by Time magazine in 2014 as one of the world's most influential people, and in 2007 she received the CNN Hero Award. She has been interviewed by Charlie Rose and Stephen Colbert, and if you've not seen that interview, you need to go again on the internet and find the YouTube. It is just amazing. She just put him in his place. He put She was funnier than he was. So if you haven't seen it, you have to look it up. Sister Rosemary received an honorary degree from Duquesne University. She is a graduate of the Duquesne program in Rome that is actually housed at the Generalate of my congregation. It's another thing we share in common. She said, "Oh, I know your sisters." She lived with us in Rome for a number of years. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce a heroine and a friend, Sister Rosemary.
That is such a strange connection, and there is something which is a bit different from both of us. We all look short, but you can see I'm shorter than Sister. I have to lower this microphone. Thank you so much. It's really an honor for me to be in this great audience of special women. I see beautiful faces, I see happy faces, and that really makes me happy to be among you. And thank you all for inviting me to share this special moment of reflection, of meditation, a moment of learning, a moment of listening to one another. I think there would be no better time when women can come together and share that heart to heart what it means to be women. what it means to be mothers. And I'm very happy that I get that opportunity to be among you, to listen to you, and to learn from you. When we talk about mercy, I think there is no creature we can put to replace women in as far as mercy is concerned. I've totally convinced myself that God, being the most merciful person on earth, is actually a woman. Last Sunday we heard Jesus telling his disciples when they were fishing, he said, cast your net on the right side. It never occurred to me that the apostles or disciples were actually casting their nets on the wrong side. So that touched me deeply. And then something else really touched me deeply was seeing Jesus becoming a woman, because he said, children, I have breakfast for you. Come and have breakfast. That is a great impact, and that is what convinces us all that God is actually having the face of a woman, because no one is going to tell us God is a man if he can be as kind as to go and make breakfast, as kind as to be so simple, to even tell his disciples to sit down with him. So let us be happy women, and let us not forget that God has given us the best of his part. We are sharing his part. Before I can tell you a lot about my own story, the story of my life and what I do, there is one of the parables which always touches me deeply. That is in Matthew chapter 12, verse 11, which says, if any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it up? This question should be applicable and should be alive for all of us. Will you not lift your sheep up? If you are a mother and your child falls down or into a deep pit, will you not cry for help? In this case, we can see from that time when this parable was given out and at our time, there are so many devout religious leaders, Catholics, Christians, who are so much taken up with rules and regulations just to apply to what the Israelites were doing that time, that you could not work on the Sabbath day. And many of us are in the same spot. We wouldn't want to give mercy to somebody because many times we feel we are time bound. We feel that this is not the rule. And to tell you the truth, I have spent my time trying to pull out women and children who were pushed into a pit by the rebels of the Lord's Resistance Army. I had to go out of the rules and regulations with my sisters to say we cannot follow time. We cannot follow the rules. To say that we are running a Catholic school and we cannot take these women with their children, which would be the same as these people following the rules on the Sabbath that you cannot work. These women and young kids were abducted by the rebels and taken to captivity, trained as child soldiers, used as sex slaves, and the very, very young girls got children from these captors. And when they tried to escape, they put out their plan of escape, and the rebels come to know it, they would either punish them severely or they would even kill them. So the children lived in constant fear of their captors. But yet, some of them managed to escape to come back. And coming back to the community, what happens? No mercy, no compassion, no acceptance by their own family, by the society where they come from. And the rebels use these tactics to let these children not be accepted, because when they abduct these kids, they were bringing them back to commit atrocities in their communities, to force them to kill their own siblings, to force them to kill their own relatives. And definitely, everyone was sure that these women coming back are going to turn to be murderers. A few days ago, I was with one of the women who was actually a wife to the rebel leader, and she was abducted when she was only 9 years old. At 11 years old, she was given as a wife to this rebel leader. And at 12 years old, she conceived her first baby out of forced sexual activity, out of continual rape. This woman could not escape because the rebel leader had a strong eye on her, and she was ever, to the point that this girl got 3 children from this rebel leader, and she remained a really slave. One day she managed to escape and came back home, and I never knew some of her stories. She only told me recently that when she was escaping, one of her babies got lost. And she never knew where the baby was until up to today. Then she came with another baby, which she abandoned somewhere. But then someone else, one of the women running after her, picked up this baby and brought to her. And she received the baby. And she told me, say, sister, I cannot forgive myself because I threw this baby. And someone has brought the baby to me, and I've not told her that I had actually thrown her away. And I told her, don't mind, because God knows you wanted to be with your baby. You have to unite with her. You have to show her more love. And eventually you can tell her this story. She will understand you. But it became more complex. Just 2 days before I came, I got a phone call from someone I don't even know. The person said, Sister Rosemary, I heard the story of one of your girls who lost a baby when she was in captivity. And I found another woman who was in captivity who has grown this child, and the child is 11 years old. Could that be that baby? And I got totally confused, but I called the woman. I said, Evelyn, may I know the name of your baby you lost? She said that baby was called Winifred. And I saw the way she reacted. She jumped up, she said she was called Winifred. And I asked, do you think she's alive? She said, sister, I don't know. For me, I felt the biggest task, because I have to work hard to get this woman connected with another woman who is taking care of this baby. And what about if the proof comes that that is not her baby? That means I will be stuck with that baby for the rest of life. I have to adopt that baby. But the fact remains, I've been used to make this connection. And this just happened 2 days before I came here. That means when I go back, I have to start that process without going and studying people to test for DNA and so forth. I have to talk, I have to listen, and try to understand exactly the meaning. But then I accept that responsibility already. You can see how most of these women, much as they suffered so much as they got the children after sexual violence, we ourselves, we, the Sisters of the Sacred Heart, had to make life for these women by accepting them in our school. Not that we were inviting them to come to study as such, we were inviting them to come to a family where they would feel accepted, where they would receive that compassion and mercy, where they would have women who can open their arms and say, we are going to be your mothers. Much as your relatives have rejected you, we are going to adopt you. And on top of that, we were determined to teach these young women to love the children they got from this sexual violence. Help these women not to turn anger on these innocent children, especially the children of the rebel leader. And if you ask me how many women were the wives, so-called, I always say, don't forget, make sure you put the quote, because these women are not the wives, but they are the sex slaves. How many did this man have? At least the ones I knew were more than 50 in one town. So how many children? There are so many children. And when these women said, sister, that's how I got the motivation. I need to bring these women to school with their children, which I knew was going to bring me a lot of opposition from the church leaders, from fellow Christians, from even some of my own sisters. I was being told, why are you bringing women with children to school? And I asked, would it be better if we left these children to perish, not be accepted? We leave them out there. I took the risk of making a radio announcement, inviting these women and say, if you are out there, come as you are. Come with your babies. Even if you are pregnant, come. That was the greatest risk in announcing such a thing in a Catholic school. I don't know if there is any Catholic school in the United States where women who are pregnant are taken. In Uganda, we don't have it. But I risked to make that announcement. And I knew, making that announcement, the rebels themselves could hear it, and that put us already at risk. But I was not afraid at that point, and said, God will take care of us if we continue working with these women. And when most of them received the call, we got a big group. From that time onwards, I got totally convinced that these women needed love and acceptance. They didn't need greater things, they needed small things. After loving them, after showing them the way, we needed to give them practical education, practical skills, which can help them support their children, can make them become members of the community, accepted. I knew these women would never be remarried. And I actually went boldly to tell them, I said, if you want to marry in future, you've got to know your marriage is going to be temporary. In the first place, get married to all the skills we're giving you, because that will be your support, that will be the support for your children. And eventually one of them told me, said, sister, I got married, and she came back to tell this story. And word started going that the rebels are going to be granted amnesty, they were coming home. And the man who married us said, take away your children and all your things and move out of my house, because your husband will come back and kill me. That is exactly the situation most of them face. Most of them are scared that they have children who people name and say, you have murderers. You have children who are resembling the murderers. You are bringing up a generation of people who will be the same as their fathers. But if people like the Sisters of the Sacred Heart are not there to accept these people, to let them continue working and know that we can rebuild their lives, what would happen to this generation? I actually think many people, even in the United States or anywhere, do not know how much we all need to get involved in supporting these women, in supporting these children, in order for us to work against what happened. And we make sure that that doesn't happen anywhere again in the world. Let us work hard to make sure that it doesn't happen even in the United States. It can happen. I've been always telling people of media. The media is a very powerful tool to spread the word, to say we have to work very hard to stop the evil happening in the world in order for it not to happen. How can the media do that? By making sure whatever affects humanity is put in the forefront. More still, what affects women? How comes there are a lot of women who are even trafficked and they are accepted? You know, we keep quiet about it. We don't speak about this global evil. We are neither nor. And when we are neither nor, we know exactly what God says about us. That is why I say, women leaders, you must be present in any situation. Come up and see exactly what affects women and speak about it. This is a very powerful group. I'm sure you need to sit down and we see how we can address the evil affecting women, evil affecting children. I'm not being disrespectful to men, but I do think women are given that special spot in their hearts to address this evil. The only problem all of us women have is that we know we are given that talent. We know we can address this evil. We know we are very powerful, but we sit back and get scared. We look and say, who will start? Who is going to be the first? I think all of us can be first. If we come together, we can be first. You know, you can be first by starting to do something small and not be afraid. Be present in this situation where there is difficulties. Make sure you are there. When I say, for me, the year of mercy means walking with someone. Walking with that person and making sure that person moves towards the level where he or she can feel he is walking or she is walking in dignity. And to accompany that, it is the women who can do that. Women, you are the most patient people. We are very patient. God has given us the talent. When we talk about mercy, sometimes we think it is something we cannot put into practice easily. And every time we start prayer, like Mass, we say, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. And one time I call my mother, every time we are traveling, I tell my mother, say, can you say for us some prayers before we go? And she always starts by saying, God have mercy on me because I am a sinner. And I never saw the connection. I wanted my mother to start a different prayer, and I said, why is she trying to cleanse herself? Because we are the ones traveling, and you say, God have mercy on me because I'm a sinner. Later, I began to think that in order for us to really get the grace of God, in order for God to have mercy and kindness on us, we need to ask Him to cleanse us. That is how I understood it. So, we all have to put ourselves to say, God, have mercy on us, sinners. We have not done what we should do. When we say there is a lot of situation of war, and we're looking at the war happening in Africa, and we are quiet about it, we should say, God, have mercy on us because we are in that war. Because we are not doing what we're supposed to do. Yesterday, when I was speaking to 8 brothers, there's a priest who came in and he made a comment to the children. He said, children, when you hear what Sister Rosemary is saying, and when you heard about the work she's doing, you have to know she is doing it on our behalf. I felt really inspired and touched. Because sometimes what I am doing with my sisters, we may think, okay, we are doing it alone. We don't have anybody behind us. What about all of these faces? What about all these women? I have seen you are there, and I am doing it on your behalf. We are doing it on your behalf. How do you think your involvement can change the lives of those women and children? You got to know your involvement can make these women have hope. Your involvement can make these women mend their lives in a better way. Make these women be merciful and kind to others. Your involvement can make these women forgive their captors. They can easily get out of that bad thought they had because they know someone somewhere is caring about us. When I shared with Eileen about that question of women running out of food, it was on Easter Day. I got so broken. I was so stressed. And I said, how is this happening? That I'm supposed to say, Happy Easter, and I'm getting the message they have no food. And I had nowhere to turn. There was one person in the United States who was writing Happy Easter to me, and I said, I'm so stressed because the women and children have no food. But we want to help them, we want them to eat. And the person said, Sister Rosemary, you need people who can surround you and say, we are supporting you. I said, I hope God can send me those people. But in the meantime, I had on Easter Monday to go to look for a garden to start planting. Physically, I had to do it. I was feeling very bad to know that women who are accepted by us, we want to help them to get out of their trauma. We are not even able to provide for them. But again, I totally believe sharing all what I'm sharing, I am sharing the responsibility with all of you. I'm sure you are listening, and some of you may want to do something different. Even you are in your neighborhood here. You heard what Sister Linda shared about the children. That was something which was so striking, that we have the same group of people in Africa, in Uganda, and you have the same group of people here in the United States. How much do you reach out to them? How much do you make those immigrants to feel they have a place to stay? They are human beings. They are accepted. All of us have this challenge that we are always scared of moving out to start to do something. To try to feel that if we do, we may be going against the law. Or people, what will people say about us? I think it's very important for us to forget what people will say about us, in as far as we think our actions are actions of mercy, and our actions are there to go to change the lives of somebody, either in our neighborhood or somewhere outside. Some of you, I hope, will have the opportunity to read my book, Sowing Hope, and also watch the movie. Also, the name Sowing Hope is now available on Netflix. You're surprised I know about Netflix. I have to learn how things go around here. And so, if you watch that movie, it will help you to understand why it was made, and also the book. The movie was made to help all of us to understand what happened did not happen in the past. It happened at our time. This is something very realistically going on in the world. And right now, it is going on. What is our response? Our response is to work hard to prevent by understanding how it happened. And I always tell people this joke that many of us do not have good reading cultures, and you will look at the book and say, no, this book has the picture of a nun. Many people don't accept to see nuns at the cover of books especially. I also wouldn't like to see myself there. But the book doesn't talk about Sister Rosemary. The book talks about these young women. I've been highlighting their plights. The book is telling their story. They are speaking in that book. You got to meet them by reading that book. You got to meet them by watching the movie. You will hear their own words. I continuously pray that our effort in educating these women, in giving them education, would be education that can give them a voice, education that can liberate them, education that can make them stand on this podium to tell their stories by themselves. And we are working towards that. And I hope in the long run, or even short run, you will be seeing some of these women coming with me and speaking about their own problems and how they're coping with it. Because one thing which you need to get about this movie and the book, it talks about the pain these women went through, but it doesn't end in pain. It also talks about how they're moving from their trauma to triumph. How these women have not let the pain inflicted on them to define the future. They are working hard to get out of that, and they can only do that with the support of people who care, with people who say, I will accompany you, I will move with you in mercy and compassion and make you reach your destination. It is a long journey. It's not something you can expect within a year or two. You see, when we talk about rehabilitation of people who suffered so much, people who have gone through this big level of traumas, we think we can give them weeks or months and say they are rehabilitated. And just look at one person who has suffered for 10 years, who has been in captivity for 10 years, who has been a sex slave, who has been raped repeatedly for all these years. Do you think this person can get out of that in weeks? It's going to take long for these people to get out of that. The only thing you can tell them is that we do not care about your past. Your life is going to start from where I've met you. And we're going to rebuild it from where it seemed not to exist. That actually reminds me of the parable of the prodigal son and the father. I always feel something different about that parable. One strange thing is that the father, seeing his son after squandering everything, after living a reckless life, he did not even ask the son to give accountability of his recklessness. The father did not ask the son, where have you been? Can you tell me what you've been doing? Instead, he embraced the son and he gave the son a new robe of love and life. That reminds me of my own weakness. Yesterday I shared in a small way about one child, one of the boys I've been helping, an orphan, which reminded me to pose this question to all of you. Have you ever been betrayed by any loved one in your life? Have you ever been betrayed? Yes. Did you react to that betrayal positively? I reacted very negatively. This boy, I put all my trust in him. He's one of the very brilliant orphans who has gone up the university, left with 1 year to complete the university, and the boy totally betrayed me and deceived me. He went off school for 1 year, doing his own things, and when I went back from one of my journeys from the US, the sister told me, that, Sister Rosemary, it's a pity your boy is not in school. And he has spoiled everything. He sold everything. He has even used his school fees for something else. I don't know how to react. After all the struggles, after all the trust, after all the love I give to this orphan. I called him and he came to me. It was on the 2nd of November. And you listen to the words which were not good to me. I told him, I said, listen to me now. Today is the day of the dead. And I'm speaking to let your dead parents hear this. I'm done with you. Finished from today. And I totally abandoned the boy for 6 months. While I abandoned this boy, the boy would write letters of forgiveness. Please forgive me. if you don't forgive me, I don't have any other option except I'll commit suicide. And I told the sisters, I see this boy saying he will commit suicide. If he committed suicide, he would have done it. He's not committing it. And then I was so hurt. I said, in case he commits suicide, we shall bury him. I mentioned all these things until one of the sisters, who was my friend and a spirit general to me, told me, said, Sister Rosemary, remember this psalm. If you alone should murder or guilt, who would survive? And I told him, I said, Mother, I don't even want to listen to that. Give me time. My heart is so broken. I can do nothing with this boy. Until when I started thinking, most probably when I began to reflect about the year of mercy with you women in Pittsburgh, I started thinking, who am I to judge and put this boy? Who am I to condemn? While I've condemned this boy, I also feel condemned. I am suffering. I didn't remain in joy, in pain throughout. I had no peace. I planned to reflect on the year of mercy, and I said, the year of mercy involves kindness, forgiveness, and confession. What am I going to confess? I really got stuck. I felt a hypocrite. And I said, before I can take action to confess, I am going to call this boy. And I got my phone. I almost rubbed his number off. But I kept it by chance. I called him and said, where are you? He said, I am in the city. What are you doing? The boy was heading to beat somebody bad, I think. I said, can you come back? He said, where? They come to me. The boy got a night bus and came to me. When he saw me, I really had to tell him, I said, I've been reflecting about what it means to forgive. You have hurt me, but I'm not going to continue asking and requesting you where you have been. I am totally forgiving you. And let us start a new life. The boy told me, said, Sister, this is the greatest miracle I've seen today. This is why I ask you, have you never been betrayed by your children? Some of us are hurting because our children have betrayed us. They have not lived the way we want them to live. And we have not taken courage to forgive them. And yet, as mothers, we wouldn't say, I think you would not say what I said, I'm sure. Let them die. And if we ever said it, we need to ask God for that forgiveness and say, if you, Lord, did not forgive us, who would survive? Because all of us deserve the mercy and sympathy of God. He has forgiven us, and imagine Jesus came and died for us. God sent His Son to die to set us free. Who are we not to forgive? Thank you so much for having me here.
To just stay here for a moment, to see all of you and to know she isn't alone. Thank you for the profound joy and honor of representing us. Thank you for allowing us to share in your works of mercy. Thank you. Thank you. Rosemary will be at her table, which is just right out this door, all day. She'll be selling her book, Sowing Hope. She has purses that the girls made. There are order forms, because I know she's going to sell out, modeled by Sister Linda. And the website, sewinghope.com. There are cards and material, but we would invite you to be with Sister Rosemary as she will be with us all day. Thank you so much.